Hello and welcome back to 3ENet Plus Listening MOOC. Improve your listening skills through practice with your instructor, Professor Rania Wahmish from University of Orange. Now let's take a closer look at the signs of listening. The types of listeners are mainly based on bad listening habits. We have the first type, on-off listener. The on-off listener, this habit comes about because most individuals think about 4 times as fast as the average person speaks. A listener of this type thinks of personal affairs, concerns, and problems instead of listening, synthesizing, and summarizing what the speaker has to say. The red flag listener, this is an emotional listener who gets upset and stops listening when he hears word statements that relate to sensitive issues or topics that can put him in. The open ears but closed mind listener. This all-knowing type of listener assumes that he knows what the speaker will say. He jumps to conclusions. He thinks and decides even before the speaker talks. He concludes there is no reason to listen because the speaker is boring and what is said makes no sense. Glassy-eyed listener, however, he looks at people intently and seems to be listening attentively, although his mind may be on other things or far away. He drops back into the comfort zone of his own thoughts, and often dreamy expressions appear on his face. The top D, for me listener, avoids complex and complicated ideas or topics. He is not able to follow the subject because he doesn't make a real effort to understand what is being said. Pseudo-listener, however, is the pose of chin propped on hand with gaze fixed on speaker, does not guarantee good listening. Pseudo-listener involves only listening to respond and not actually understanding what is being said. This type of listener shows fake attention. The matter over mind listener doesn't want his ideas, opinions, and judgment challenged or overtuned. When the speaker says something that clashes with what he thinks, he may unconsciously stop listening, even becomes defensive and plan his responses. The fault finder listener, this critical type of listener finds faults with what the speaker says or how he says it rather than concentrating on the message. He misses the most important facts and the main ideas because he focuses on small details of each item being discussed. The note-taker listener, this type of listeners listen with the purpose of getting all possible information. He spent a lot of time taking down notes. He forgot to listen to the main points because his desire to write everything about what the speaker says is the main target that he desires to achieve. The hubbub listener, this type of listener is easily distracted. He may create disturbances that interfere with his listening efficiency and that of others. He squirms, talks with others, or shuffles papers to show his or her boredom. Moving on, let's turn our focus to the types of listeners based on communication. In terms of communication, you have the first type, which is involved listener. This positive type is with attentive participation, and he participates well in the discussion. He tries to ask questions to clarify statements. He sends clear verbal and non-verbal responses and values, good eye contact, etc. He listens objectively to the speaker's point of view. He tries to align his thoughts with that of the speaker's intent. The active listener, however, he closely pays attention to the message that the speaker tries to convey. He asks questions to ensure that his interpretation of content and feelings is accurate. He also gives feedback to reach a common understanding with the speaker. The positive listener also never disagrees with a speaker until he has played back the speaker's point so that the speaker agrees it was correctly assimilated. Now let's move to the main categorization, which is used in the literature. When it comes to the main categorization of listening styles, there are 4 types only. We have people-oriented listeners, content-oriented listeners, action-oriented listeners, and time-oriented listeners. The first type shows strong concern for others and their feelings. The second type of listeners are interested more in what is said rather than who is saying it and what they are feeling. Action-oriented listeners, on the other hand, want brief and to-the-point information that can serve for decision-making. Whereas time-oriented listeners, they value brief and concise interactions, not going beyond a lot of time for the said communication. Arriving at the end now, we sum up what we have already discussed in details. There are just some of the major types and styles of listening. All forms of listening can be useful in our life, but it's of paramount importance to know which ones you should be developing and building to meet your needs and expectations. It is also recommended to work out on bad listening habits, triggering misunderstandings, and decide which ones you might need to stop doing so much of. Now that you almost know the main types of listening and listeners, you can recognize fairly easily the style of communication you're most comfortable with. You identify your own style first, then position yourself on the listening spectrum. Don't be afraid and start branching out. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video.